Senator Adam Schiff believes that Donald Trump is trying to weaponize the Department of Justice and federal agencies. That is, turning the power of the state into a tool to attack political opponents and consolidate personal authority. And Schiff warns that without oversight and accountability, Trump could use state power to punish his enemies, silence dissenters, and even break the limits set by the U.S. Constitution. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Today, we're talking about a warning that's drawing a lot of attention in Washington. If a leader can use state power to protect himself, then what will happen to the rule of law that America has always been proud of? This video is for analysis and reference purposes only, and does not represent any political or media organization.
The story begins with a recent interview. Senator Adam Schiff, who once served as chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, warned that if Donald Trump returns to power, he could deeply interfere with the Department of Justice and other federal agencies. According to Schiff, Trump had repeatedly pressured the Department of Justice, demanding investigations into his rivals and publicly criticizing prosecutors and judges who didn't take his side. That's why Schiff calls it the act of weaponizing institutions, turning public agencies into political weapons. But on the other hand, Trump and his supporters argue that it's actually the Biden administration's Department of Justice that has been weaponizing power by constantly investigating Trump. In their view, Trump is merely trying to restore fairness and clean up a system that has been corrupted by politics. From a neutral perspective, what's clear is that America is facing a crisis of institutional trust. Both sides doubt the neutrality of public institutions, especially the Department of Justice and the FBI, organizations that are supposed to stand above politics. The issue is not just about Trump or Schiff, but a broader question. How can the state apparatus remain neutral in a society increasingly divided by politics?
Experts are split into two camps. One side argues that if Trump gains control over the Department of Justice, he could reshape the power structure in his favor, similar to how some leaders in Hungary or Turkey have done. But the other side says the president has the authority to oversee the Department of Justice, and reforming a biased institution is legitimate. What's worrisome is not the back-and-forth debate, but the blurring line between law and politics. Because when justice is seen as a weapon of one side or the other, trust in justice becomes the first casualty. And when oversight mechanisms from Congress and the courts to the media weaken, power can easily slip beyond constitutional limits. That is what many people, both inside and outside the United States, are concerned about.
Adam Schiff's warning is not just a political statement. It touches on one of the deepest fears within American democracy today: the fear of power imbalance and the erosion of institutional trust. Looking at the broader picture, we can see that American society is more divided than ever before. Half the country believes that Trump is a man who dares to speak and act, someone fighting against a system corroded by politics and special interests. The other half fears that, if he returns, he will use the power of the state as a personal tool to take revenge, suppress, and control. That division doesn't exist only on social media. It seeps into every institution, from Congress and the courts to executive agencies. The result is that any action taken by the government, right or wrong, is interpreted through a political lens. And this is the most dangerous part. When justice is no longer seen as justice, but as the weapon of one side or the other, then faith in the rule of law collapses from within.
We've already seen traces of this in recent years. Judges have been threatened simply for rulings that went against Trump or Biden. Prosecutors have been branded as politically motivated. And ordinary citizens no longer know who is working for justice and who is working for power. Another consequence is the fading line between the state and the individual. If a president, whether Trump or anyone else, can order investigations into opponents or fire law enforcement officials for not being loyal, then the constitutional checks and balances that underpin the U.S. system are in serious danger. These concerns are not theoretical. In several other countries, from Hungary and Turkey to Venezuela, we've seen a similar scenario unfold. An elected leader gains power, then gradually turns public institutions into tools of personal control, all in the name of national interest or restoring fairness. At first, the public supports it, but over time, the system of checks and balances erodes and personal power grows beyond control.
Back to the United States. Adam Schiff's statement reveals a very real concern. If Trump is reelected, he could appoint loyalists to key positions in the Department of Justice, the FBI, or the CIA. That could alter the culture of independence that has defined these institutions for decades. But on the other hand, many Trump supporters believe that because these agencies are not neutral, a strong reform is necessary. They don't see it as a threat, but as an act of self-defense against a system they view as manipulated. And this is what makes the situation so complex. Both sides believe they are defending democracy. One side defends it by preserving institutions, the other by changing them. When two opposing visions of democracy collide, the common ground for dialogue gradually disappears. As a result, even if no one actually weaponizes institutions, the mere belief among citizens that the system is being weaponized is enough to weaken democracy from within. The impact extends beyond politics to the economy, society, and even America's global standing. Investors, allies, and international organizations are all watching how the United States manages this division. Because if the world's leading democracy loses faith in its own system of justice, the message to the rest of the world will be unmistakable. No democracy is beyond vulnerability. In summary, Adam Schiff's statement is not just a warning about Donald Trump, but a reminder to the entire American political system that power, if left unchecked, will always find a way to exceed its limits. And the question that remains for all of us is, who will oversee the one in power when that person can also control the tools of oversight? What do you think? Is Trump truly weaponizing the Department of Justice, or is he simply trying to restore fairness for himself and his supporters? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next analysis. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.